Okay. All right. What is going on, YouTube? So we are back. My name is Andrew Miller, site editor at hookemheadlines.com. With me again are Shane Black and Tarek LaCour, contributors at hookemheadlines.com. Also, not honorary Yankees fans. Seems like very intent Yankees fans with game one, right?
Yeah, game one.
Game one tonight.
Game one against the Astros, yeah.
LCS.
Full disclosure, I don't expect to win this series, but gonna watch it anyway.
Yeah. Also, you guys are probably going against most Longhorns fans that would be in the audience. So.
Yeah, well, we're different.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot to talk about this week. Iowa State game last weekend, entertaining in a weird way, not a great way, but Texas manages to pull out the win. I've seen Iowa State come out on the wrong end of a lot of those games, and so I do feel a little bit bad for them, but I've also seen Texas come out on the wrong end of a lot of those games. So for the most part, just happy that for the first time this season in a 3-point or less score game, Texas actually comes out on top. So, Tarek, I'll pass it over to you. Give some, you can give some of your opening thoughts on the game last weekend.
Well, I was at the game with a friend of mine from Texas A&M, who actually wore a Texas. Well, he didn't wear a Texas A&M shirt. He just wore a Texas A&M colored shirt without the logo on. People noticed, but it was a lot of fun. The energy was very kind of flat in the stadium. It wasn't as up as it was for game one and for game two when I was there. So, and ironically, that's kind of how the team was playing too. I guess the audience plays off the team a little bit, but I was pleased most of all because it looked like even when Texas got down, Sark and the main players remained calm. They didn't get nervous. They didn't play tight. They played like they were in control of the game at the end, and that's how it looked. So it was good to kind of rewrite the script a little bit, that they were able to come back from behind at the end after having given up that lead. It was good to see, Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy have their moment together at the end. I thought that was a great route at the end. Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson, what more can you say about them? And if nothing else, we have learned how valuable Ryan Watts is, because now we have seen what happens in his absence. So it's very good that he will be back for Oklahoma State. He'll be very needed in that game. All hands on deck. But all in all, happy that we won the game. It's not a given that you will win those close games, and it keeps Texas in control of their own destiny in the Big 12, which is all you can ask for. And also, this is something I tweeted out right after the game. Sark has won as many games this year as he did all of last year, when we still have 5 to go. And also, he now has a winning record at Texas. He's now 10-9. So there we are. What do you think, Shane?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been mentioning it, but this is just one of those games where Texas of the past decade would not have pulled out a win. Sark mentioned it on Monday. The Longhorns did not play good. They actually played bad in a lot of areas against Iowa State, but they were able to stick with it and pull out a win. I mean, it just shows. I feel like this team has turned a corner in that sense. Sark has always talked about the leadership committee that's in place, and I think that shows through on Saturdays. Nothing really phases this team. They're almost kind of taking a mindset of Quinn Ewers: don't get too high, don't get too low, and just play 60 minutes. And if you have the right game plan, the better players, they'll typically turn out in your favor. But yeah, as a fan, I watching from the couch, it was. Right from the beginning of the game, when Bert Auburn missed the field goal after Texas was able to block a punt that they should have returned for a touchdown, that Overshone and Anthony Cook kind of fought over and fell. After that missed field goal, I was like, oh, here we go. And of course, it was 60 minutes of back and forth. At some point early in the second half, when Texas went down the field, hit a field goal to go up 17-7, I expected the offense to kind of get into gear and put it away, but credit to Iowa State's defense that didn't happen. So yeah, the Cyclones are always going to be a well-coached team, and they're going to bring you down to their quote-unquote talent level when you play. So I think for Texas to get out of here with a win, sitting at 5-2, 3-1 in conference, control their destiny when it comes to the Big 12, this is a perfect position and one that I think all Longhorn fans should have been happy with. If you told them at the beginning of the season they'd be sitting in this current position.
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple opportunities I think that Texas had to pull away in this game. And, Shane, you had mentioned it after they hit that field goal to go up, I believe it was 17-7 in the third quarter. Yeah, it kind of felt like they were starting
game drops. Oh my goodness.
Yep. Yeah, I tweeted that during the game, and then Xavier Hutchinson has a drop that's even worse late in that one. God, man, Xavier Hutchinson's now had 4 drops in the last 2 weeks. That's as many as he had in the previous, I think it was 14 games combined. So catching some fortunate breaks there if you're Texas and Kansas State. But yeah, because if he catches that ball, I think game's over.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah.
You still had 2.5 minutes, and you'd only be up a field goal.
Was it 2.5 minutes left at that point? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Well, and yeah, if we only took 20 seconds to drive down to score that field goal against Tech. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now it's lucky that you got a break there, just like you got the break with the fumble. But I just was not understanding how Casey Kane was dropping that many wide open passes. If it happens one time, okay, but it was several game-changing passes that he could have, and it just crippled the offense's chemistry.
Yeah. It's tough because I think it's one of those things where he's out there for a good pretty much any time there's 3 wide receivers on the field, Kane is one of them, and getting no looks, and then the couple you do get, you drop. It's got to be like really big time in his own head at that point. And obviously there's no excuse, especially with the depth of this receiver room. But yeah, at a point I just start to feel a little bad for the kid, but definitely some big drops that weren't of the magnitude of Hutchinson's drop, but they certainly hurt Texas and stunted some offensive drives.
He started 7 games. So far we played 7 games. He has less than 100 yards receiving. So yeah. Not a whole lot there.
He's clearly like the 7th or 8th player in the receiving pecking order. If whatever that is.
I don't know what I really would love to know what a Jay Hall has done that allows him not to see the field. I really want to know because he got more playing time in the national championship game than he's gotten since he's been at Texas.
Well, he looked okay against Tech, and he's just running routes and what was it, like 1 or 2 targets, 1 catch, but Iowa State did a nice job with Jatavian Sanders. For the most part, they did a good job with Xavier Worthy. I wanted to talk about just like one. So I know they've been good in the prior 2 seasons for Roschon. Sorry, lights flicker. For Roschon Johnson, it's really been the last 3. But this season, man, you're starting to get this feeling with Bijan and Roschon that hasn't been there, where it's like they're just not going to let this team lose. And that was one of the driving forces, I think. You're still getting guys like Anthony Cook making big plays. Jalen Ford's just showing a different type of awareness in pass coverage than he has in the last, or that he even did last season. He was decent in run stopper last season, but like that play, that read over the middle is something we haven't seen from the linebackers in a while. So Overshown's still pretty inconsistent in pass coverage, especially adding that, more blitz looks to his responsibilities. I don't think that's doing him any favors in pass coverage and just him adjusting to that. But yeah, I mean, you're getting a different attitude with a lot of the guys on this team. And whether this team at the end of the season has won 8 games or 11, whatever that win total is, I think a lot of that will be because of a lot of these juniors and seniors that are just tired of losing. And I know a lot of people have said it, but man, yeah, Roschon Johnson is one of the most important players on this team. He really, really is. What he's doing in the game, obviously, but also that voice in the locker room. Man, that's going to be missed next year. You just hope it carries down to some of these other guys. I think it will. The culture.
I mean, even the plays he's making on special teams, he had that big hit on a kickoff return. Just momentum building plays. And I love the fact that, you see it way more in college than you do in the pros, but Texas is throwing out some of their best covering kicks, covering punts, trying to block punts. I love seeing that. You want to have your best athletes, your most skilled players, your most dynamic players on the field as much as possible. So I'm a fan of seeing those guys out there. I don't like the argument, you want to avoid injury. That's so fluky. I think you send out your best players as much as you can.
You know who else does that? Nick Saban.
There you go.
Jamison Williams was on every special team last year, and he made a difference. And that's carrying over to Texas. I love them seeing that. Although you're still not a fan of Xavier Worthy returning punts, right? Or have you given up?
I still get nervous every time that ball is in the air and X-Men is back there, because it's to no fault of his own. He's always trying to make the big play. I feel like there's just going to be a time where he doesn't call for the fair catch, either gets clipped or he gets spooked and puts one on the turf. But I'm knocking on wood as I say that, so don't come back to this point in the recording if it does happen. But me and Tarek have talked about it, and that's something I'm a little nervous of. But yeah.
Am I the only one that's in the camp of Deshaun Jamison returning punts instead of Xavier Worthy?
Completely agree. I don't really understand why when Jamison.
You mean Deshaun Jamison?
Yeah.
You said Deshaun Jackson.
I said Deshaun Jackson.
Jamison, yeah.
He's in the NFL. He's not able to return punts.
Oh, sorry, my bad on that.
I don't understand why. Jamison is tying all kinds of records. Has how many? At least 2 or 3 touchdown returns on kick and punts, and even more that have gone, there's been a couple times he's taken it all the way inside the 10 and got tripped up. I don't understand what the change was and why it was made. Clearly there's some sort of method to the madness, but I agree with you. I think Jamison should be back there.
There was a little bit of Jeff Banks and the staff talk, at least on special teams, talking about wanting to minimize mistakes. I know that Jamison has had a couple, but he hasn't had that much. Jake Smith used to.
Yes, I was about to say Jake Smith is the one that comes to mind. He muffed one in 2018 against Hoke State, 2019 maybe.
2019, yeah. He was sliding in. There was 2 muff punts because I was at that game. There were 2 muff punts that night. It was
Jamison never gave. He could have had a couple. I never felt nervous with him back there. If anything, you're like, okay. I kind of hope the punter hits a booming kick to give Jamison some time to assess the field, because what was that game a couple of years ago where he returned it for a touchdown, had it called back due to a hold, and then the next he returned it all the way inside the 15. That was against TCU, I think. But
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember which game.
He's electric back there. So it has to be some internal. I'm not sure unless you've heard anything, whether it was out of spring or fall camp. I think it's just guesses at this point.
It was just the overarching theme of wanting to play a little bit more conservative, clean up mistakes, manage the field position better. Maybe he was making too many fair catches inside the 10 or something, which I don't remember him doing that. But anyway.
Yeah.
So it is interesting though. There were 2 things I wanted to talk about from that Iowa State game that one thing I posted in an article today that I thought was a little obscene. So I was looking it up on 3rd and long, which classifying 3rd and long is anything 3rd and 7 or further to the chains. Texas allowed 7 of 10 on 3rd down conversions. 4 of those were 10 yards or more. On 3rd and 10 or longer, Texas was 4 of 5. Against against a team that is like, what is it, 70th in the country in 3rd down conversion rate coming into that game, that is an issue.
And they didn't pressure him on 3rd down most of the time.
No, they did not. It was, man, I don't know. I mean, there were different plays that I saw. I know sometimes it had to do with them picking on that boundary side with Watts out, but like that was not the only. There were some times where Jaron Thompson was a little bit behind on coverage on the sidelines.
Yep.
There were Jahdae Barron was it looked a little slow at times. I don't know what it was, but
it's frustrating. It's frustrating. I feel like I'm yelling at my TV half the time when it's like 3rd and 8 and Gilbo is playing in the slot 10 yards off. Like, I don't think he's making that choice himself. There's got to be a reason that's happening, but I like the talent we have, especially against a team like Iowa State. Obviously, you got to worry about Hutchinson, but why not get up, play press on the outside, send 5 or 6 guys at the quarterback, and see what happens.
Against Iowa State, so Ian Boyd tweeted out something interesting, and I started paying attention to it. And I'd seen a few of the looks. I guess I just wasn't paying attention to the formations in that way. But the bunch trips was giving us a lot of issues. It didn't really matter after the second quarter whether they were doing bunch trips right or bunch trips left. Especially when they stacked. It was an issue for us. It was causing all sorts of confusion in the secondary. It was allowing wide receivers to sometimes break off and kind of clip a defensive back and allow Xavier Hutchinson to get right on an out route or to get in on a post and get open. So it was creating a lot of space, and it was hard for us to adjust. We did a little bit better in the 4th quarter. There was a key, like 3, I think it was 3rd or 4th down where they were lining up bunch trips left, and we were able to hold them off and get off the field. But it was frustrating.
Yeah.
I do want to say, to counter your point of like lining up 10 yards off, Barron does a better job than Gilbo. I think that's just going to be an adjustment period. Also, part of that this season for the nickel has been Anthony Cook being a little slow over the middle and help. He's never been the best in like deep pass coverage.
Okay.
But also I could be completely wrong on that. That's just my thoughts on it. If you do watch, like I don't think anyone has qualms with the way that Watts and Jameson are playing this season. I don't mind some of the soft coverage approaches. I did a whole big long piece yesterday on Deshaun Jameson, breaking down his progress, things like that. Talking about how well he's doing playing the bail technique on the outside, lining up 6-8 yards from the line of scrimmage. His pass breakups, he's had pass breakups on 4 different route types against 2 or 3 of the better wide receivers in the Big 12, or I guess if you want to include that and interceptions. He's been playing well, and I don't know on 3rd downs what the issue is, where how 1st and 2nd downs are just fine, and we get into 3rd downs and it's just a disaster.
Well, I would wonder how many of those completions on 3rd and 4th down went to Hutchinson. At least I'm looking at here on that last drive before Anthony Cook was able to force the fumble. He had 4th and 2 that went for 15 yards to Hutchinson, and 3rd and 10 that went for 20 yards to Hutchinson. You just got to make someone else beat you. Like, it's as simple as that. I hate seeing it, like last weekend specifically, go to number 8 over and over and over again. I know there's a reason he was leading the country in receptions and still is, but at some point you just got to put, shadow him with 2 guys and say, hey, beat me somewhere else, because they were getting it done, just giving the ball to Hutchinson every time.
Yeah. Part of that, you're Hutchinson's going to get his.
Yeah.
You just kind of got to live with it. But the troubling part to me was letting Jalen Noel go for damn near 100 yards and 2 scores. He's not that.
He kept looking shocked himself that those things were happening. He's like, how did I catch that?
Well, and the
It was like
separation
Mike, when he makes that first shot.
That seemed like a lack of preparation from knowing what you're getting out of Jalen Noel. He's very fast. He's like a 10. He's like not a 10. Was he like 11.3? No, he is sub 11 in the 100-meter. He's very fast. I would have to go back and look. He is very, very fast. That's his
Brennan
thing,
Thompson
though.
fast.
Yeah. Anyway, those two things were huge issues to me, that the slot receiver gave us that many problems, and that by early in the fourth quarter, we had given up more points to Iowa State than Iowa State had scored combined against, what was that? Kansas State and
Kansas?
Yeah, against the Kansas schools.
And they scored more against us than Alabama at the end.
Do you think how much do you think that has to do with the running quarterback aspect?
Well, I was going to ask you before I will answer that, but I was going to put this to you: how much with Xavier Hutchinson do you attribute that to Watts not being there? Because when Watts was covering him, I didn't notice Hutchinson. Watts goes down, then Hutchinson.
Well, that's a big thing, because the physicality off the line of scrimmage really disrupts Hutchinson and Dimitri Stanley. Dimitri Stanley looked okay. He's not very good. Or I don't know. He might be. He just hasn't we made him look like a mid to decent, or like a middle to decent tier, I guess, wide receiver in the Big 12, and he's been production-wise one of the worst boundary wide receivers in the Big 12 this season. So that's just not something you want to be talking about with the secondary. But yes, I think the disruptiveness of Watts at the line of scrimmage is quite apparent now.
As far as the running quarterback, I thought, it was kind of a hit and miss type of a thing. I thought they contained him pretty well the first quarter and a half. Then he would break off a few. I mean, that's the way that Iowa State's offense went. They would just, if they made a play, they would just hurry up and keep going, and that's how they would get momentum, and that's how they would break, contain, and things like that. But if they would miss a play, then it would kind of all settle down. I think that it's far. I don't know that the running quarterback had much to do with Hutchinson getting open. It was just Hutchinson getting open because no one was going to stop him after Watts went down. And you're again seeing there why Sark, earlier this season, he said when he's recruiting corners, he doesn't like anyone below 6 foot. He wants to be really physical at the line of scrimmage. But the only guy that he has right now who can really do that is going to be Watts. So hopefully, with you guys like Malik Muhammad, hopefully Jovian Taviano, you'll have more of that.
Yeah. I mean, Malik Muhammad could play the field corner spot too. Derek Williams could play boundary corner. I mean, Derek Williams.
I think safety speed back there. That's one thing I was noticing with defense. Is this defense we have a very good defense because they play very good fundamental football, but we're still not a very fast defense. So you have a team on it that has some fast people, but overall the team speed is not fast.
Yeah,
none of the safeties are fast.
No. No.
Yeah, I would say
they're very smart though. They don't let things get behind them, but they're not just breaking. Right. They're not breaking on the ball fast.
And I would say that hurts us when it comes to the front four as well, because you see a lot of those pressures come up the middle from Sweat, Ojimo, even Coburn to some extent. But then that's when they create the pressure up the middle. That's when the running quarterback can kind of flee to the outside. And then, Moro Ojimo is is faster than he looks, but he's not going to catch a Hunter Deckers who's on the move to his left. That's just not going to happen. So I think that is kind of where the disparity.
Catch JT Daniels.
Yeah,
anyone.
Yeah. But yeah,
do you remember that play I'm talking about?
Oh
like, like JT Daniels is running. To the side,
I talked about that a few shows ago, man. Yeah.
I just think that's where the disparity comes with pressures to sacks, and it hurts the Longhorns when they play a quarterback who can move a little bit, or even some who can't. These big guys are blowing up the middle of the line, and then really no help around them. So that hurts.
Yeah, I don't know. We can talk about the edge rushers all day, though. Yeah, I guess I've proved or tried to prove my points enough from that game. There were a lot of positives and there were a lot of negatives. And I think one thing that people got to remember is like, I think even after I made the prediction, I was like, I think it's going to be closer than that when it was approaching game day, where it's like, I think I said 28-17. And even that felt like a little too wide in some ways, but like at the same time, I was like, I don't even know if Iowa State's offense can score 17 points. So clearly I was wrong to a small margin, but like Iowa State.
Texas missed enough plays that they would have made it about 31-17.
Yeah, but you could say that about every team that's played Iowa State so far this season. They managed to muddy the waters so much.
Yeah.
I thought this was incredible, though. That is so weird. I get it was a situational thing, but Adrian Martinez had more passing yards against Iowa State than Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, the offense, it never seemed to find that sort of rhythm. And when they did find it, on the last drive, really, it was all with the run game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting to note.
Iowa State had some interesting little coverage schemes that threw Ewers off. He was rattled at points in that game. I think a lot of that had to do with like those instances of Casey Kane drops, but
yeah,
just frustration. But like that was a weird fumble earlier in the game. I think I don't know. It was just a freshman thing.
What was going on there?
Yeah, I think he's just gonna have one of those a game.
That 3 high safety look is very different. You don't see it very often. So
yeah,
consequently, that was his first time actually playing it. So yeah, I wouldn't say he was rattled per se, but he never found a rhythm. And then I think Sark proved how good of a game play caller he was, because he kind of took a page out of Kyle Shanahan's book of saying, you know what, you're not on right now. I'm just going to ride my running game, and I'll use the pass when I absolutely have to, which is kind of how Shanahan has used Jimmy Garoppolo in the years that they've been together. So
yeah.
It worked.
No, I thought it was a good game. I thought Sark coached it well. In that situation, in that sort of situation, that grinded out game, I think that was his best play calling to date. Iowa State makes it tough, man. They're good. They are probably the best defense in the conference. They're very good, cohesive unit that plays really well together at all levels.
Was anyone shocked that Will McDonald didn't seem to do anything?
A little bit, man. Kelvin Banks was good, though.
Yes, exactly. But I was waiting. I was like, okay, all week we'd heard about Will McDonald, the best edge rusher in the conference.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just didn't notice him. I mean, Quinn Ewers didn't look like he was getting flushed all that much or anything. He had time to throw. Throws weren't there. I mean, they played good coverage and things like that, but I was expecting more out of McDonald. So that just shows you how much the offensive line has grown, and also how big of a steal Kelvin Banks was from.
Highest graded.
Thank you, the ball. We need to send that guy a fruit basket again for Christmas.
Hey, originally an Oklahoma State commit, though, so.
Yeah, Gundy talked about that.
Oh yeah, he would, dude. He gets so butthurt.
Yeah.
Well,
He's pretty
the
petty.
thing is, if you're Gundy, and I said this a little while, I said this on Twitter after Gundy was talking about how Oklahoma and Oklahoma State weren't going to be a thing once they went to the SEC. I think every day Mike Gundy kicks himself a little bit for not taking that Tennessee job about 5 or 6 years ago, because like the thing at Oklahoma State, he's basically done all he can at Oklahoma State. You're just not going to get the kind of recruits like those elite guys.
He doesn't.
And Gundy knows, like, he felt like, okay, maybe he finally stole one that really shouldn't be going to Oklahoma State, and then he not only didn't get him, he ended up at Texas when he had beaten Texas and all those other things. Hi, sweetheart.
The Tennessee thing's always interesting to me because, like, so Mike Gundy, the thing that's often overlooked from people outside of Oklahoma State is that he does not like recruiting 4- and 5-star guys. He thinks that they're too full of themselves, that it's too much effort, and that the program should sell itself. He wants Mike Gundy type character guys. He likes getting those James Washington 3-star. I mean, who doesn't want a James Washington 3-star? That type of recruit that is undervalued and just has that type of impact. But Kelvin Banks, yeah, once like bigger programs started coming at him, it was done for Oklahoma State. And we'll see if a similar thing happens with Jelani McDonald. I don't think we need to talk a whole ton about that. We can talk more about that next week. We can get more into recruiting with the off week. But yeah, I mean, it's what happens if you're Oklahoma State. I mean, same thing with like a lot of like tech early scouts, sometimes with TCU. It's just what happens for a lot of those types of programs.
TCU can't say anything. They have Quentin Johnston, who was our commitment for a year. I don't want to hear it.
I say we as in Oklahoma State. That version of me will come out a few times here. But like Oklahoma State got beat by Texas transfers and flips. Like, man, yeah, Jared Wiley was looking.
Jared Wiley decided to finally do something.
Where was that 35-inch vertical at Texas?
Yeah.
Well, you have to actually block in Sark's offense. You don't have to block in Sonny Dykes' offense. You just have to catch.
That is true. Well, yeah.
You'll see what Jatavian Sanders and Helm and even Jalil Billingsley are doing. They're putting their shoulders into these defensive linemen and pushing them back. That's not what Wiley wanted to do, and it was either a part of either Sark's offense was going to change or Wiley was going to have to change, and we know how that was going to turn out. So
yeah, I wasn't surprised when Wiley transferred. I thought he was good, but yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
The Quentin Johnston.
Onto
Yeah, man, if we had hung on to Quentin Johnston, him in this offense, he'd be.
Could you imagine a world where it could have been Quentin Johnston, Isaiah Nayer, and Xavier Worthy, and Jordan Whittington? You know, now that's a squad.
I like Isaiah Nayor. I really liked his film more right away. But I would rather have Quentin Johnston than Isaiah Nayor, and I think most people would agree with that.
That's fair. That's fair too.
Absolutely. I'm just, but the things you wouldn't have to have chosen. You could have had both.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Wasn't that Rashad Samples that flipped him?
No, it was Meringer getting fired from Texas, and then
right, the whole coup that almost happened. Yeah.
All right.
He went from recruiter of the year to like the worst wide receivers coach we could possibly have.
Let's not talk about Tom Herman. Moving on.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so yeah, well, I mean, do y'all have anything else about the Iowa State game?
I would say just the last thing I'll add, we don't have to spend any time on it, but Daniel Trejo, who was sort of a godsend after Pearson was, had some muff snaps to start the season. In the second half, he had 2 punts. Both of them were 31 yards, and the ensuing Cyclones drive both resulted in touchdowns. So 31-yard punts aren't going to get it done, and it's pretty noticeable when you can't flip the field. I'm not asking, for Michael Dixon level efforts out here, but
I am.
yeah, it'd be nice, but 42-yard net.
Shevsky.
Yeah, just back-to-back 31-yarders really hurts the defense, and it's tough. So it'll be interesting. I wonder how locked in stone his job is for the next 5 games, but something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, that is true. Field position. I mean, I guess this might serve as a segue. Field position is going to be big this weekend. It's going to be huge. If the TCU game and Iowa State games are any indication for both teams. Because I could talk for years about this game, and probably will. I'll be in Stillwater this weekend. I won't be at the game, but I'll be up there for homecoming. Just for any of y'all that maybe gathered that already, I'm an Oklahoma State grad for undergrad, and so this is the one week of the year that I always dread for covering Texas, just because either way, it's not.
This is fun. Reason 2,500,052 why we need to go to the SEC tomorrow. Go ahead.
I'm a super big fan of the move. I'm all for it. So yeah, from every angle. Anyway, you know what, Shane? Let's start with you. Again, opening thoughts for the Oklahoma State game.
Yeah, as a financial backer of the Cowboys last weekend, it was a little heartbreaking to see them choke away a 2-touchdown fourth quarter lead. But I mean, Texas is 6.5-point favorite, and that started to climb this week because of the shoulder injury to Spencer Sanders. We talked off mic. Andrew, you can obviously dive way deeper into that, but Sanders is really the lifeblood of this offense. And unlike other Oklahoma State teams, they don't have the skill position players like we're talking about off mic to kind of combat any problems they have at quarterback. So unless we get a superhero performance out of Spencer Sanders, I think the Longhorns are in a good position in just a really broad sense here. But you never know in Boone Pickens Stadium. I mentioned this a couple pods ago. I really like that this game's at 3:30 and not under the lights because that scares me a whole lot more. The fans are right on top of you, so the night game just makes it a whole lot spookier, especially, not a cloud in the sky and the Stillwater air. But, I think Texas, who survived the game they came out flat in last week, is in prime position to, really click on all cylinders because from what we saw in the Oklahoma game, there are a lot of, other factors here, but I think that's more of the offense that I'm expecting to see than what happened against Iowa State last week, especially against an Oklahoma State defense that's, almost as much of a doormat as the Sooners. So, yeah, I think
it's not almost. It's worse.
Worse?
You think it's worse?
Yeah, their run defense is statistically worse. Yes.
Yeah.
So.
Well. Yeah.
Now, to Oklahoma State's credit, a lot of their players either went to the NFL or transferred to bigger schools. So, yeah, make of that what you will.
Yeah, losing Jarek Bernard, he ended up transferring to LSU. We lost 2 defensive backs to the transfer portal, multiple players. Yeah. I guess at a high level, and to respond to what you were saying there, Shane, yes, it was very apparent down the stretch last week that Spencer Sanders was hurt. He is battling, I would imagine, 2 lower body injuries, I believe a knee and an ankle. At this point, his entire body has to be in pain from how many hits he takes. But it's mainly it's the non-throwing shoulder. I don't know which ankle. From watching it last week, it looked like the planting ankle when he was throwing. So I guess that would be the right ankle. But it was hard to tell. Maybe that's the knee. I don't know. But there's something on the right leg. I don't know about the left. So point is, he's very banged up. He ran out of juice last week, and you could see that on that interception that he woefully underthrew. That kind of got TCU going on their game tying drive. So, and he's completed about 45% of his passes the last 2 games.
That's, I was listening to Chad Hastings and Zay, and Zay said that Mike Gundy looks to look his son in the face and say, "Look, I don't trust you, but we're rolling with you anyway." So, I mean, look, if you're completing 45%, if you're that hurt that it's making you feel that bad, then you're really not in a position to help the team win, are you? Especially against a good defense.
Sure. If we had any sort of quarterback depth, I would agree with you. But Oklahoma State just doesn't. It's not like, so in most years, Mike Gundy is not super hesitant to put in the backup when Oklahoma State is up big, like most coaches. It is not the same this season. Gunnar Gundy, even when we were playing Arkansas Pine Bluff, Gunnar Gundy didn't really come in. I think it was until late in the 3rd quarter. He was super hesitant to put in Gunnar Gundy when we were up big on Central Michigan. I mean, they ended up coming back. Central Michigan ended up coming back in that situation, but he doesn't trust Gunnar, which is weird because there was a joke in Oklahoma State circles that Mike Gundy was just holding out for Gunnar Gundy to start, and then he was going to retire in Stillwater. And so, but I wouldn't be surprised if next season Gunnar Gundy's the 3rd string, because at least there's 2 blue chip freshmen and then a commit. So I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if Gundy's on the plains of Auburn next season if that job comes open. But be that as it may. Sorry. Well, I just don't see him staying there the way things are going, but that's another story. The main point for Oklahoma State is Spencer Sanders is the heart and soul of that team, and he's earned that right. He's played well. If he's at the point where his body is about, if I was watching that game, it looked like he could barely stand up at the end. That you've seen what's happened with Tua Tagovailoa. If he's at the point where he can't run and really can't throw and things like that, and you already know that Texas is going to come in pretty upset because they're on the revenge tour, and this is where things really, as bad as the Oklahoma loss was last year, I think people could at least say Red River never makes any sense, and this is just another chapter in that story. So we'll just let that one go. But the Oklahoma State game, where he was very instrumental to like bringing them back, them winning that game, then them going on that run, yeah, I think that left a really sour taste in their mouth. And so him not being anywhere near 100%, if you're throwing 40% against, and this is the other thing that's a bit scary, TCU is a really bad defense too. So if you were that bad against them, I think Texas is going to make you pay for that. So will it cost you? Or so it's more like, all right, if you give him the week off, he can come back. You're still not in terrible shape in the Big 12. You can still, things can happen. You only have 2 losses. That seems like the smarter thing to do. If he's not at about 70, 75%, I wouldn't put him back out there. And I don't think he's anywhere near that this week.
You make some valid points, but it's Spencer Sanders. He's just not built that way. He's going to play.
Well, I'm not talking about Spencer Sanders. I'm talking about Mike Gundy needs to be like Mike Tomlin and say, look, I'm going to protect you from yourself. That's what the head coach is supposed to do. So,
yeah. I guess
it may be behind closed doors he is, because it's kind of weird how, again, I never bet on a game, no matter what. I don't like the money in sport. It makes the game less fun to me. That everyone else can do what they want. Shane, I'm sorry you lost money, but if it's kind of weird to me that, like, okay, it was a 1 point Texas was favored, and then like overnight it goes to like 7. It's like, okay, Vegas knows something that they're not letting on, because there's no way it should just swing that much, that quickly. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a swing that you had when Dylan Gabriel was pronounced out.
Exactly.
I mean, pre-game, but yeah.
Same thing with Max Johnson when he went down at A&M, and then the line went way up too versus for Alabama.
But
they went nowhere near. Although that was way too high, I was like, come on.
The spread last week went up by, it was like 2.5 or 3 points as the week went on, and Spencer Sanders still played. So the same thing happened almost last week. It opened at 3.5. It's now at 6.5. So it's gone up 3 points. I guess to get back to the actual the game planning here, I guess kind of schematics, Tarek, you brought up an interesting point of, I mean, Spencer Sanders had no more than 2 completions at each level of the field beyond 10 yards. So he had 10 on intermediate, 10 on deep balls. 2 on intermediate, 2 on deep balls.
If he had 10 deep balls, he was doing great.
Yeah, well, and that's the weird part. So he's been really, really good on deep balls this season. I think he's the highest graded deep ball thrower in the Big 12. If he's not the highest graded deep ball thrower, he's in the top 3. He was the highest graded as of last week. And so, but no, I mean, in the last 2 weeks, his deep ball has kind of gone away. And again, it's injuries, I would imagine. And the way that Oklahoma State is going to be able to beat Texas is going to be taking a chapter out of Tech's playbook. And that's really it. Is you're going to have to dink and dunk. You're going to have to hope that Texas can find a way to cover 3 or 4 decent wide receivers that can run good routes, don't really drop many balls, and that you can manage to play the possession game. You get a couple turnovers, you win the turnover battle. That's how this game would go if Oklahoma State were to win. I just don't see any other way.
Yeah, I think looking at it too, Sanders' injury aside, I mean, if he doesn't play, I don't think the Pokes have any chance. But when it comes to the ground game, the past half decade plus with Justice Hill to Chuba Hubbard, and then even Jalen Warren last season, Oklahoma State's been able to run the ball with consistency, and they have a back who can beat you. This year, it's not really seeming that way. Andrew, you can attest more to it, but just looking at the box score numbers, Dominic Richardson's their best running back this season, 427 yards on 4 yards a carry. So if Sanders is hurt and there's really no semblance of a running attack, I think it's going to be feasting time for the Longhorn defense.
Yeah, so their ground game is going to be where Texas matches up really well as far as it concerns the actual running backs for the Pokes. Like, Mike Gundy is going to have to get real creative if he wants to, or that Oklahoma State's just going to find a way to beat Texas where Texas can't adjust. That's really it. Sanders still looked fast against TCU. That wasn't his issue. It's just, the arm strength went away. The cutting ability kind of, so you could tell it was starting to get to him a little bit, but they're still going to try to run him. I have no doubt. He went for, I think it was a little more than 50 yards and 2 scores last weekend. Most of that coming in the first half, but he still had his mobility in the second half. I fully think that's going to be there again this weekend.
Can I raise a concern to your thesis?
Mm-hmm.
You said you want to use the Texas Tech model. That would mean that you would be putting Sanders in direct contact with the defensive line a lot of times, running him straight at them on 4th and 2 and things like that. That works with Donovan Smith because at least Donovan Smith at the time wasn't hurt. Sanders is already hurt, so you're just putting him in a direct path of getting more hurt. So this is why I don't think that's going to work. You're going to have to, yes, obviously he's going to have to run, but he can't be running on 4th and 2 into Jalen Ford, into Sweat, into Ojimo, into DeMar Ganover shown. That's a recipe for fumbling and hurting something else.
No, he would be running to the outside. Yeah, that's my bad. I did not explain well enough on what I was saying there. I was saying more just the dink and dunk strategy, 3-4 yards of play, that type of mindset, because that's what Dominic Richardson's good at. He can pick up those tough yards. If you watch the Baylor game, even the TCU game, he runs hard. He's really good at being like a late game closer. He's had pretty good ball security lately. He's a pretty versatile back, a decent blocker, pretty good catching out of the backfield, but he is not going to hit the big plays. He's a little bit slower. Even last season, he was second or third string for most of the season. Jalen Warren was good, but the ground game's just not as good. Last season, the ground game was good, not great. Like, Texas had a better ground game last season than Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma State had the defense to be able to rely on to win. Man, it took the defense for them to beat Missouri State last season. I think a lot of people forget that Missouri State was on a game-winning drive in week 2 against Oklahoma State last season, and the defense held on. It's a different team, and I mean, do I think Oklahoma State's the number 11 team in the country right now? No, I do not. I think at this point, an injured Spencer Sanders, I mean, that's what happens when you're over-reliant on a quarterback that's carrying the ball 15 times a game. Yeah, you're going to start running into your issues. But anyway, I think that's how if Texas is going to lose this game, it's because they're not covering the routes underneath. They can't manage to adjust in game, and Spencer Sanders gets outside for some big plays. That's where Texas needs to be able to cover. Donovan Smith, that was such a weird game. Props to Joey McGuire, but I was looking back at it. Donovan Smith, more than half his runs this season are scrambles, not designed runs. 75% of his runs in that game were designed runs. It was they completely flipped the script of the way they used him. And I know a lot of that was 3rd and 4th down, but interesting that I don't know. I mean, if Texas was starting Hudson Card, this would be a completely different conversation, but Texas is starting a quarterback that right now is eons more effective, I think, than Spencer Sanders.
The other thing here is eventually, and I think this is something that is overlooked a little bit in the Tech game. PK did adjust to what Smith was doing. The problem became the defense being on the field way too long. So that was one thing. But with Quinn Ewers, especially against this really bad pass defense, I expect this to be a game that can turn into a shootout. And I just don't know if Sanders is prepared to go tit for tat in a shootout.
No. And I think last weekend showed if this is going to be a shootout, Oklahoma State's offense is probably going to run out of steam. There's only so much they can do with hurt Spencer Sanders.
And remember, too, that Texas has a really good run defense. So if I'm PK, I'm going to be like, all right, we're just going to shut down the run. We're going to make Sanders beat us with the pass. We know that's not going to happen. That's how we'll win.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they try to dink it and dunk it like you're saying, like Tech did, I'm just, putting 7 guys near the line of scrimmage, letting our corners match up one-on-one on the outside, with a little help over the top. But like we talked about, Oklahoma State doesn't have the horses at wide receiver that they're used to seeing in Stillwater. So I like our chances.
Tech has better wide receivers, I think.
Yeah, I like the Texas chances with Watts.
I think Tech has better receivers than Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
So
Watts and Jameson should be able to hold up outside. I'd like to see PK, force the action on an injured Spencer Sanders. I'm sure he will. I'm sure that we're going to see a good amount of pressure, because I don't think you're going to want to let Sanders get comfortable in any sense, especially when he's banged up.
Yeah. I mean, if there was a time for Bear and Sorrell to have a big game, I was thinking about this earlier. If there was a time that you could wish you had Joseph Osai back,
Yeah.
Now would be it. He had one of the craziest games I've ever seen 2 years
And
ago.
the person of, yeah, we have I think the guy that's just like Joseph Osai is Justice Finkley. I see a lot of Osai in Finkley, but he's just a year away. But he's always so close and around the ball. It's like he just needs that extra step.
Yeah.
But it's getting there. You see that dog in him even as a freshman, and he's playing a lot. He is in serious minutes, so he's really proven himself. And Barron Sorrell is never going to be a great pass rusher, but he will earn his keep because he will shut down. He sets the edge and stops the run. So
he had a really good.
Everyone can't be Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, but I'll take what we have.
Yeah, Barron Sorrell had a really good game against the run. He was getting off blocks nicely, like you said, setting the edge last weekend. Yeah, that was definitely something I'd noticed. Yeah, I guess if I'm looking at the Texas offense, man, oh God, yes, Oklahoma State's defensive front is good. Like, I think you're gonna see times when it's like, yeah, they are good, but I don't know. Bijan Robinson's going to be in Bijan Robinson and Quinn Ewers both. I don't know who in the receiving core is going to be in for a huge week because I really think it could be a situation like take your pick. But it's really whoever Jason Taylor is not helping over the top on. Jason Taylor is their best cover guy, and he's a safety. So,
that doesn't bode well.
No, it hasn't. And I mean, so here's the thing is like Oklahoma State's pass defense has looked good at times, but it's because the linebackers have been covering well, the safeties have been helping out well, and the defensive line has been wreaking havoc. I don't think Mike Gundy's going to have to go like Gary Patterson mode times 20, or Derek Mason will, to be able to find a way to get some type of stunts to get pressure on Quinn that's going to be enough of a difference maker. But that would be my only concern from the Texas standpoint is Oklahoma State's edge rushers and defensive ends, because they can slide them inside and get some interior pressure, and that can be a little bit of an issue because you can pick on Christian Jones in that sense still enough to finish the playoff, or at least enough to rattle Ewers. That would be the only thing. But that's such a minor factor here, I think, that, like, man, Xavier Worthy should be able to get over the top eventually.
Yeah.
Jordan Whitting. Yeah. Sorry
to interrupt. I was going to say, it seems like Oklahoma State's pretty vulnerable in the deep passing game, which kind of bodes right into Quinn Ewers' strengths. I'd like to see a lot of those, especially once Bijan gets it going and Roshan. A lot of play action concepts where you have Worthy and Whittington on the same side of the field, and Worthy's running that deep post, and then Whittington's underneath running like 15, 20 yards straight across the field. And then you obviously have JT Sanders in the flat. But I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities on the play action where Texas can beat Oklahoma State over the top. And I think you're going to see it because I mentioned this on last week's show. You can tell there's a lot of pistol play action or even just regular out of the shotgun where immediately Quinn's eyes fixate downfield on Xavier Worthy, who's undoubtedly, running down the field. And he eats the ball a lot, which is a good sign out of a young quarterback. But I feel like against Oklahoma State, those are going to be more open than we've seen in the past, at least last week. So I expect a couple of big plays down the field from this Texas offense in the passing game.
Well, and yeah, that's true. Oklahoma State wasn't tackling very well in the last 2 weeks either, so you could even get Worthy involved in the screen game, and he can eat. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear from y'all's perspective. Like, who do you think in the receiving game has the biggest weekend?
Well, I'm interested to see does Casey Kane start again after last week? Because if it's a Jay Hall out there, I could see a Jay Hall having a good day. He's the kind of receiver that Quinn Ewers would pair well with, because he's tall and Ewers has a high release that kind of favors those bigger receivers. But assuming it's the same lineup, I'm going to say Jordan Whittington, because I think Whittington is going to be matched up with the safeties a lot, and he's going to be eating their lunch money. So I'll say Whittington.
I like Worthy just based on the fact of sheer number of looks he's going to get. And you bringing up that point, Andrew, of Oklahoma State struggling to tackle. Worthy's going to get the ball at least a couple of times behind the line of scrimmage, like he does every game. So if he can break one of those and then have a 50-yarder over the top, that's 100 yards right there. So I could see Worthy really having a big game on Saturday.
I could see, West Virginia's defense reminds me a lot of Oklahoma State's, so I could see that happening too. But I think Whittington's due a really big game.
Yeah, I think that Jason Taylor is going to be devoted to covering Worthy over the top. I think that you're going to see that regular old, okay, we're going to double Worthy, try to take his deep passing game threat away, and then you're probably going to have 6 assets on most common running downs devoted to stopping Bijan Robinson. They did that last season. You're probably going to get 4 guys at the line, or 4 linemen, that Leo, probably 3 linemen, and then the Leo, and then Xavier Benson and Mason Cobb, who are 2 of the off-ball linebackers. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to leave JT Sanders, Jordan Whittington, maybe another running back, Jaleel Billingsley, any of them.
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot of that. More just empty sets using both tight ends. That'd be. Texas does like really well out of empty, and but they don't run empty that much is the problem. I don't get that.
Yeah, it's like Sarkisian's allergic to it. I don't know.
I think sometimes like Sark just doesn't like even looking like a true spread team, so he just won't. And even when he sees it's working, like I want to do something else. So, but he has been running that 2 backs a lot. I like that. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, with how effective.
This would be a game where you could see a lot more zone, wide zones, I would say. So that'd be interesting.
Yeah, you also, I mean, yeah, this would be the week for Isaiah Nayor, but to that point, Billingsley and Sanders could be issues.
It's a dagger.
Oklahoma State's average defensive back is like 5'10", so, and they're small. They're smaller. Sean Michael Flanagan
Hashtag free AJ Hall.
Yeah. He could be big. Sean Michael Flanagan is one of their green defensive backs. He's just not up to speed. There's a lot of those that are just not up to speed in the Derek Mason defense yet. And unfortunately for Oklahoma State in the long term, I think that's going to be a thing because Derek Mason's probably going to have another job in like another year or 2. So, not because he's fired, but I don't know. If he ever turns this defense around, he'll probably find another job elsewhere. Oklahoma State coordinators tend to leave pretty fast. So, but to the conversation of Texas, man, yeah, this is a game where Texas on paper matches up extremely well. And I was actually listening. I don't dive in really a whole lot, but Chip Brown this week had someone named Sam Mays on. That's a former Oklahoma State offensive lineman, and he mentioned that with a banged up Spencer Sanders that it feels like a 10 or an 11-point game, and that's something that has stuck with me because I think Oklahoma State's offense is going to run out of steam, and the defense isn't good enough to. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's as simple as that. I think this, in reality, if Texas is going to play in the Big 12 championship game, I think this is a game where they probably win by 10 or 15. They're like 10 or 14. Like, they could do that pretty easily if Quinn Ewers comes out and gets in rhythm early on. Because Bijan Robinson, man, I think he's going to go for 150 plus. So, I don't know. I guess it's pick time. I said 37-31 yesterday. I'm modifying that to 37-28. Texas.
I'm pretty close. I mean, I'm 1 point different. I'm going 38-28 Texas. I kind of I think Texas is going to get big stops when they need to. They're going to be able to get off the field on 4th down. I could see this game being decided by some big plays in between the 40s with both teams, pushing the agenda, trying to go for these 4th and 5s, and whatever defense can kind of step up in those positions, put their team in the best chance to win. I think Texas is ready for that, and I think it's going to be a pretty clean 38-28 too. I don't think it's going to be, anything to worry about.
I'm going 42-20.
20. Okay.
I think this is going to be this is going to start off kind of close, then it's going to be a beatdown.
Yeah.
They're going to figure out they're going to figure out how to stop Sanders because he's just going to be too banged up. And then once that happens, then they're just going to take off. And if Sanders doesn't play, this could be the second shutout for an Oklahoma team. If they roll out Gundy, then I think that they'll be pitching a shutout or trying to.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a multi-score win for Texas. This is just one of those games where it's like yeah. 42-20. If you're right about that, I will be impressed. But
to the listening audience, if you're noticing that Shannon and I are looking a little depressed, it's because the Astros are up 3-1 at the bottom of the 6th.
Well, if I had a rooting stake in that, I guess I would have something to say about it.
For just final thought on this game that we're going to see on Saturday, I feel good that you, Andrew, think it's going to be a 2-possession Texas win, because I feel like you can be the most kind of level-headed on this one because you have insights to both sides. I mean, I don't think you're super swayed whenever you make your picks, but I feel like you saying that you think Texas is going to win by 2 possessions gives me, the fan in me, a good feeling.
Yeah. Ramble on for this game forever. I've tried to analyze it every which way to figure out if one team wins, how that happens. I mean, I think anyone that likes numbers tries to do that, but yeah, it's tough. Like it's tough for the Oklahoma State fan base because yes, it's really nice to think that I mean, Oklahoma State blew a really big lead last weekend in a way that was really hard to do. But, I mean, you got Kansas State on the road after this weekend. So, this gauntlet's not over. And for Texas, I mean, you have nothing to, you're not going to get caught looking ahead because next week's the bye week. You're not really going to have a hangover, I don't think. Maybe. It was a tough game, but I don't think it was emotionally draining by any means. This is a spot where I think Texas can get a big lift. And really, I think the big stretch for Texas is going to end up being that Kansas State TCU back-to-back, those back-to-back weekends in early November. So that's where I think a lot of people thought, This
is a big one to get going into the – are we going into the bye? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big one. Sitting at 6-2, 4-1 in conference, going into the bye. Granted, we don't have a ton of injuries, but get healthy and figure it out for the last 4 games of the season, especially with those 2 you just mentioned. I think it's going to be all hands on deck this week. And yeah, the more that we're talking through it, I really think Texas is going to come out humming on both sides of the ball.
I think you win here. You do a few things. Number one, you secure a bowl game. You didn't go to that last year, so there you go.
Yeah.
You're already stepping a step up there. You control your destiny in the Big 12. You have the week off. You let the other teams that are kind of ahead of you play each other and beat themselves up, knowing that they are not going to have that bye week. And you also have a week to kind of figure out what worked, what didn't, what to adjust, and kind of come back and hit the ground running against Kansas State. I'm not as worried about Kansas State for Texas because I just think offensively they're not going to be able to match wits with them. So, yeah, that's the game that I'm worried about on the schedule is TCU now. But I even there, I'm not as worried because Sonny Dykes and Pete Kwiatkowski have a very good relationship. I.e. Pete Kwiatkowski just eating his lunch money year after year when one was at Washington, the other guy was at Cal. So that cheers me up a little bit. But, one game at a time, you win this game. You silence the doubters. You'll probably go into your next game close to the top 10. So everything you wanted in the season is ahead of you. And also for anyone who is listening, no, Texas is not going to the playoffs. Steve, please stop having that discussion. It's annoying. Next year, I think they can get in there. But this year, just give me the Big 12 trophy and I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, so I will say this. As an Oklahoma State fan that tries to be level-headed, that made it through the end of that Big 12 championship game last season without drinking himself unconscious. I feel this season's starting to a little bit come off the rails for Oklahoma State in terms of their Big 12 contender status. But
how many Big 12 titles does Gundy have? 2?
1?
So you mean that if Sark wins the Big 12, he'll have won it as many times as Gundy has.
The point that the point that you have to get with Gundy to match him is whether it be de facto or actual losses is Big 12 championship game losses. That's where Gundy really shines. Because, oh man, the amount of times that Oklahoma State comes oh so close and doesn't quite get there. But we're not that good this season. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is this is the time where it's I'd root for Texas. I don't want to be covering a bad team. And this is where I go to school at the moment. So I still have some allegiance in terms of. So I mean, this is the time where Texas can hit the ground running and really get going. And so I'd like to see a complete game from both teams this weekend, and I'll be the classic annoying fan of both sides where I just don't want anyone to get hurt any further. I think that's the main thing coming out of this one is if Texas can continue, I mean, hell, you don't even really if you have some stingers you have the bye week. Texas is in a pretty good spot right now. So I don't know. I get to keep talking in circles about this game. All right. Tarek, I'll pass it over to you. Any finishing thoughts?
No, but I think this is a very important game for Texas to win for multiple reasons. One is to kind of keep their momentum going, also to give them more momentum on the recruiting trail. I think if you win this game, there's going to be some more commits coming that way. Also, just this is another thing too. I think if Texas wins this game, it's certainly very possible that they win out. But because this is the Big 12, it's likely you might lose another game. So this game gives you a little cover if you lose another game. So that's why this is so important. So I feel confident that Texas will come out victorious out of Stillwater and will be controlling their destiny in the Big 12 and will be bowl eligible.
Yeah, I echo Tarek's sentiment. Big game to continue the momentum, the upward trajectory. And I would just say, I mean, we talked through it and we all predicted Texas double-digit victories this weekend, or 2-possession victories at least. Stillwater is a hard place to win. And I'm not saying the winning is hard. I'm not saying that because we know how that goes over with the fan base. But I will say
it's not wrong, but you shouldn't say it.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, just because Texas is a 7-point favorite, and you might hear on the broadcast if the Longhorns start to run away with it, oh, how banged up Spencer Sanders is, yada yada. It's a good win to go into Stillwater. To go into Stillwater, walk away with the win. That's a good win, especially in the position that Texas is right now. So, yeah, I don't like getting talked into like. Last week I was hearing it a lot too. Oh, you're favored by 16 points over Iowa State. That you only won by 3. I don't buy into that. Every win in this conference, especially on this journey to get into Dallas, is big. So.
Especially a road win too. So.
Yeah, road. Yep.
And also, if Sanders doesn't play, as Eric Naleen of Inside Texas said, Texas cannot complain about never getting any breaks because you went 0 for 2 against the you didn't have to play the starting quarterbacks for the Oklahoma school. So this seems to be like, after all these years of torture, the Almighty trying to like he parts the Red Seas, he's trying to part the other teams out of the way to get you to Dallas. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, well, okay, so that is an overarching point that I'd like to make, is that, like, if you're looking at it like Oklahoma State or Baylor last weekend or OU, man, Texas made it through with their backup quarterback and looked all right. Against West Virginia, pretty good. Against Alabama in the second half, pretty good. Like, you got to have depth in your quarterback room. That's part of being a good team. And so as an Oklahoma State fan, I'm not playing the oh, woe is me because Spencer Sanders is hurt. Like, Oklahoma State's been dumb with the way they've used him sometimes, where it's like they've run him up the middle when they're up by 21 or more points against a non-Power 5 team in the second half. You don't do that. That's not a smart play. I get that Gundy doesn't really have the sense of like player preservation. That sounds terrible. I don't mean to put it that way, but like it's one of those where it's just not a smart play. And again, to OU, yeah, I mean they didn't have quarterback depth, so I'm not playing the woe is us card. I think Texas and TCU might end up being the 2 best teams in the Big 12 when it's all said and done this season because they have quarterback depth. Chandler Morris went down in what was that, game 1 for TCU, and look where Max Duggan is now. Yeah. And it's anyway.
Good point. It's a good point.
The last thing I want to say is if Texas wins this weekend, and I mean, I'll knock on wood because, again, there's going to be a part of me that wants Texas to win this game if Spencer Sanders is seriously banged up, because it's like I think that just for the split fan in me that's probably the best case scenario is, again, for everyone not to get hurt. But what if Texas wins this weekend? That means that they've gone undefeated in October. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time that happened?
I couldn't tell you the top of mine, but
it's probably not. It was. I think it wasn't 2018. They lost to Oklahoma State in October.
Yeah, it had to be a Red River year, and
I can't remember.
2009, maybe.
I think 2000. I think 2012. It was like 2012, 2013 was the last time that Texas got off to a 3-0 start too. So, it's been a while since Texas has done things.
2013 was the last time.
Okay.
So
it's a while ago.
Right, yeah. when Mac was playing for his job.
Yeah. Yeah, Max last year. So, okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, that'd be a big marker too, not just the bowl eligibility this early on, already topping. Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot on the line for Texas this weekend, going into the bye week with momentum, and then because that November schedule is going to be difficult. You got Kansas, you got the Kansas schools on the road, TCU and Baylor. Baylor isn't what we thought they would be, but I still think that's going to be a tough game. Get through this, man. Even if you go 500 in November after this, that's a successful regular season compared to what we thought during the preseason.
I'm of the opinion now, if Bijan Robinson, Roshan Johnson, Quinn Ewers, and Xavier Worthy are healthy, Texas is going to be just fine.
Yeah, that's true. So, okay. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on Saturday. It's going to be real interesting. That's for sure. All right. Well, that is conclusion of week 8. Hook'em Horns football show. I will be back for the post game on Saturday, live from Stillwater. So, yeah, that is pretty much it. See you.
Welcome.
Welcome.